Hey everybody, what's good? What's going on? JB here, back with another CyberInsight live stream. And today we're going to be talking about the latest AWS certification that I just passed. I actually passed it last week, and that is the AWS Certified SysOps Admin Associate. So if you've been following my channel recently, you've seen that I've been putting out a lot of different AWS content and AWS labs and even a practice test, and it was really all for the purpose of trying to study as much as I could to pass this exam. If you aren't familiar, there's three different AWS associate exams. There's an architecture one, a DevOps one, and this admin one. And apparently this admin one is the hardest one out of all of them. So I've actually been really focused on studying for this the past 3 months. And so today we're going to talk about my story of how I narrowly passed it, all of the different uh, resources that I use. So I'll share those with you. We'll break down some costs as far as the different resources and labbing and stuff like that I did. And then we'll also do a little bit of a recap of all the different types of learning objectives that are required for you to study to be able to be proficient to pass the exam. So I'm going to hop over into the other browser, but as I always say, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. As we're moving through all of this goodness, you can go ahead and throw some comments in the chat. We'll hit those up as we move through it. And yeah, we'll just tackle things as they come along. So let me move over into my browser real quick. And I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit of a story here before we jump into this. So right off the bat, I did end up passing it, but man, I got set up. Or I guess I set myself up. So I was expecting to take the test on a Thursday. I had done all my final preparations as far as reviewing learning objectives and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus on some hands-on lab stuff on the Wednesday before and get ready for Thursday. Well, I'm sitting here at my computer doing about to do some lab prep stuff. And I get a text from the Pearson Vue testing center like, hey, you missed your appointment. We're open for another few hours if you want to come over and still get the exam done today. And I was like, oh, are you kidding me? I'm like, well, I thought I had it for Thursday. I'd like to, actually take it on Thursday. I'm not necessarily in the mental space to take it right at this moment. And come to find out, when you're within 24 hours of taking the exam, you actually can't move your scheduled time. Anytime before that, you can move it. It's free. You can reschedule as much as you want. But once you're within that 24-hour window, if you want to move it, you're going to end up losing the money that you paid for the exam. So I was like, damn it. Okay. Well, luckily for me, the testing center that I was going to take is about 5 minutes down the road. I was in no space to take this exam at all at that point. But I was like, well, I'm not going to just waste the money. I might as well just go take it and see what happens. And I was just really stressed out, and it was just not a good situation. So made my way over and ended up taking the full amount of time. We're going to get into how much time is actually allotted for this exam and the amount of questions and all that stuff here in a minute. But yeah, it was really tough, and I ended up taking the full amount of time. I was stressed out. They don't let you know right away if you pass, so you actually have to wait like a day before you get the results, because there's some uniqueness about this particular cert compared to the other associate exams. And yeah, it was just a lot of stress. It was not fun, but thankfully I did pass it. And now, having a little bit of a different perspective on that, I think I can help alleviate some concerns for some other people who are preparing to end up taking this exam. So let's hop in and talk a little bit about what the exam actually entails, some of the logistics as far as what the exam is made up of, how many questions and all that type of stuff. And then we'll jump into the learning resources that I used and a few other things here. So for those who are unfamiliar with the exact things that it's supposed to cover, really, this is a hands-on type of exam. So the solutions architect exam is a little bit more high level as far as different components and understanding what the components do. In this case, you're supposed to understand what the components do and be able to configure, monitor, and troubleshoot any issues with them. So it definitely is a bit more challenging as far as the requirements. So you can see here from what they're wanting to validate here is actually be able to support and maintain AWS workloads. And workloads is pretty much any type of services and applications within the AWS environment. They want you to be proficient both with the GUI, so the management console, and also using the CLI. I didn't really run into too much where I had to know CLI stuff. It definitely was much more the objectives that you'd be doing with the console versus a CLI, but there was a few things. You need to understand the security aspects of the different services that are within the environment, troubleshooting, monitoring, logging, how to do alerting. This is definitely not a type of exam where they're going to necessarily teach you networking concepts. So you should have a fair understanding about at least static routing, DNS, route tables, things like that. Business continuity and disaster recovery is a huge thing, and you see this across a whole bunch of different services, whether it's backing up image files, whether it's using S3, whether it's using AWS backup itself, a whole bunch of different things, understanding in which case you'd use those, the cost between the differences of those. So whenever you have different types of competing requirements, how you would kind of figure out which solution is best for that and how to go about implementing that. So they kind of give you some background on recommendation. We kind of talked about this here a second ago. Like, you need to understand networking concepts. Having hands-on with this definitely would be quite helpful. I mean, they're expecting you to have a few years of AWS working knowledge. Me, myself, I haven't actually had to use AWS in an operational environment, but I've done a decent amount of labbing. I passed the CCP last year and actually did a lot of labbing with that while I was going through there. And I think that kind of made it so I was able to tie these things together pretty well. So let's see some other things that might be interesting here to point out. Well, so out of the 3 associate exams, this is the only one that actually has labs. And there's 3 labs that are included in this. I think the labs account for 20% of the total grade of the exam. And we're going to talk about some resources you can use to kind of prepare for that. But outside of the labs, the types of questions they have is multiple choice. It's either going to be pick the best answer out of 4 different answers, or it might be pick multiple correct answers out of 5 or more potential answers. Let's see if there's anything else. Here they mention 15 unscored questions. I think there was a total of 51 questions or 55 questions total. I'm sure that's in here somewhere. And the passing score is 720. And if we see how I did, let's see if I have that here. I got a 735. So I passed by 15 points. So it was tight. And I think there was actually a few questions. Normally when I go and do these types of questions, you are allowed to mark questions as you go through. You can circle back to questions and review all of them before you actually move on to the lab portion. But once you move on to the lab portion, you can't go back and change any of your answers for the question and answer portion of the exam. So whenever I do these, I always flag stuff and go back through at the end in case, a lot of times you might end up being able to pull out information from other questions or other potential answers that might help you answer one of the earlier questions. That's just something that I like to do. But yeah, once you get to the point where you're done and you hit next with the question section, then you're going to move into labs and you can't go back. And then once you do one lab and you submit that, you move on to the next and you can't go back and do anything with the other labs. I think that they mention, or should mention in here somewhere, you have not 90 minutes, you have 3 hours for this, so 180 minutes. As I mentioned, I took the whole amount of time, and that was basically due to some issues I was having with the labs. I was able to get the actual questions done in about an hour. Let's see. They say plan to give yourself at least 20 minutes for some labs. Some of the labs, some of the tasks were easy, and I had prepped well enough for that. But some of the other labs themselves, I got caught up on a few things. I knew what I needed to do to be able to, or I knew that I could do what I needed to do in order to pass them. because each of the labs kind of gives you some high level objectives, and there's like, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 different things that they're asking you to do. Um, but I got caught on some stuff where I just couldn't find where in the GUI the option was to do what I knew that I could do and needed to do. So that was kind of frustrating. Normally, when I'm working through this stuff in the labs at home, right, you have Google, you're able to be like, okay, I know that I should be able to do this. You go look it up. AWS documentation is excellent. So you normally are able to find the answers for the stuff that you need to do. But yeah, that definitely was a little bit of a challenge when it came to that. As far as the lab topics that I had, I think I can say this. I don't think this goes against the NDA because I'm not saying specifically, what you had to do. But the lab topics that I had were related to AWS backup, cloud formation, and Route 53 and S3. Let's see. Got some questions coming in. I'll throw these up here and answer these before we kind of move on a little bit further. Any free online resources for preppers studying before taking the test? So as far as free, the best thing that you can do free is going to be, you definitely want to make sure that you sign up for the free tier for AWS and actually get hands-on experience. So that and the AWS documentation should be pretty good. I also would recommend going on Reddit and taking a look in the AWS certification forums there. They will pop up some free resources. The resources that I used besides those were paid resources, but they were very, very cheap. We're talking, like $15. And once we get a little bit later into the video, I'm going to share all those with you and give you a price breakdown. So it really wasn't too expensive to actually end up getting the resources necessary for me to pass and study. Let's see. This next one, was lab work practice the most important component of your study? I think that kind of depends on how you learn things. So some people are very much hands-on learning. It really was a combination of using a course, using practice exams, but specifically practice exams that give you very good explanations for all of the wrong answers. I always find that is really beneficial when I'm doing practice exams, because I'm not just trying to, pass the practice test. I'm actually learning from the explanations of why something is or isn't, right? And then definitely the hands-on with the labs as well. I would say you definitely do need the hands-on with the labs, though. You're not going to pass this without having hands-on experience doing things in AWS. But I don't know that I would say it was the most important thing. I'd say that all three are very important. What other AWS cert? So the only other AWS cert that I have at the moment is the CCP. I did just pass the CCSP. So I always get this acronym jacked up. The Certified Cloud Security Professional. It's like pretty much the CISP equivalent, but for cloud that ISC Squared does. And then I'm trying to think of other cloud certs that I have. I have the Juniper Cloud cert as well. So and Azure Fundamentals. So I have some cloud cert experience. I would say the CCSP is definitely the much more advanced or higher level cert, but it's completely vendor agnostic. Let's see. I have AWS practitioner cert. I plan to do SAA developer SysOps. So that is definitely the smart order to go as far as that. From everyone that I've talked to, the architecture one is definitely like the dip your foot in the pool type as far as the associate exams go. It's supposed to be, not as technical and really kind of like builds on and reinforces the stuff that you learned in the CCP. But for me, my end goal here was actually doing the advanced network specialty cert. And since I was told that the SysOps admin was like the most difficult one, I just figured it would be worth just doing that and then moving into the advanced networking one. But now having passed this and talking to other people, everybody's like, yeah, after you pass that SysOps admin cert, if you haven't passed the architecture one, you could pretty much take a week or two and just freshen up on some specifics that are related to that and easily be able to go past it. So I might do that just for kicks and giggles, since the information is still like really, really fresh in my mind. And then I'm already starting to read up and lab out stuff for the advanced networking specialist exam. Professor Black Ops, what's up, man? Appreciate that. Appreciate you dropping in. All right, so the different domains that it covers here and kind of the breakdown of the percentage, like, does this really help anybody when we're talking about? I mean, I don't know. It's almost equal across everything. I don't think that you're really going to get anything out of this except understanding the different domains that are there. But like 18% compared to 16%, whatever. I don't know. So like, what does that really mean as far as the monitoring, logging, and remediation? You're going to end up hitting up CloudTrails and CloudWatch a lot. Understanding what those are, understanding how they're implemented, understanding where those logs actually go, different places you can do that, how you can alert on those logs, how you can configure alerts for those logs. So setting up like Amazon Simple Notification Service and sending off an email or something like that, which if you are interested in any of that type of stuff, I actually have a lab video that I put out on doing that exact thing. Trying to think other things with that. Troubleshooting. System Manager. System Manager is a big one. Understanding what you can do with System Manager. Understanding the agents. Understanding how you can actually manage EC2 instances with System Manager without having to SSH into them, things like that. Reliability and business continuity. So this is definitely very big, and this because I don't know if you think about it from an admin perspective, if you're actually working on these types of systems, you need to make sure that they're reliable, they're up, they're running, and kind of the big benefit of having a cloud environment is the fact that it's able to overcome any type of service interruptions or performance degradation and either have some type of redundancy or be able to scale out. So this is definitely one of the main selling points of the cloud, and definitely one of the main things that you need to really understand. So using auto scaling, different types of caching, database stuff. And I hate databases. I've never enjoyed anything about databases. You're going to learn a lot about databases, whether you're talking about RDS, so relational databases, all the different versions that they have for that, or DynamoDB and NoSQL databases, and different options that you have for caching with those, multi AZ type of scenarios, read replicas, what you do in certain instances whenever there's performance issues with your database, all sorts of stuff. So you're definitely going to be hitting that up. ELBs, so the elastic load balancers, different types of load balancers, whether you're talking about application or network, health checks, their DNS service, Route 53, all sorts of different types of things that you do there, different types of routing policies for Route 53. You're going to need to know different cases when you're going to use those. So whether you want all traffic going to one thing and you want to fail over, or maybe you want to weight things so that 50% of the traffic goes to one and 50% of the traffic goes to the other. All sorts of fun stuff with that. Backup and restore strategies. Again, I have a lab video on this that you could go and check out. You're going to want to know how to use AWS backup. Snapshots, backups. Also, how that works with databases. Cross-site replication. Whether you're going to be taking things and how long like your lifecycle policy is for those, how you want to do that, how cost ends up impacting those. All things that you need to know. I see more questions coming in. I'm going to hit those up as soon as we get through these last few domains. Deployment, provisioning, automation. So having standardized images and having them configured in a way where they already have all the necessary software configurations on them is, again, one of the big benefits of using a cloud environment. I mean, it's also one of the benefits of using virtualization, right? So if you're coming from an on-prem type of environment, then you're going to be used to having system baselines and maybe baseline VMs that you use and push out to things. So kind of same type of thing or similar type of thing. CloudFormation is a big one that you're going to want to use. So CloudFormation is what they use to implement infrastructure as code. So you're able to write stuff up either in JSON or YAML, and you're able to pretty much automatically build out a whole bunch of resources. Now we could go and we could click through the GUI, and it's great. It's very easy. But when you have to do that for 50 different instances, it takes a long time. So CloudFormation allows us to configure things, get a template, we know what we want to do, and push that out via code, and then we're able to do that much, much more quickly. There's also other types of tools that you could use. Terraform, I believe, is another one that will help you or aid you in that. I believe there's also some others. But CloudFormation is AWS's, I don't know what I want to say, but like built-in ability to do that. So definitely you're going to need to know how that works. You're going to need to know how you can read the templates and understand what's going on. As I mentioned, one of the labs that I had on my exam was dealing with CloudFormation. So definitely want to hit those up. Again, I have a lab video for that could help you out. Let's see, other things. Other types of automation and DevOps types of tools that they have. OpsWorks, right? So you definitely might want to do that. System Manager we talked about. I mean, so if you had, I believe that's Chef. I always get that confused. It's Chef or Puppet. And if you're coming from an environment maybe where you were using like satellite server or something like that, that might be somewhat similar, familiar with stuff that you're doing. Automated patch management, again, System Manager will help you with that. AWS config, you can use that to help standardize different types of things across your environment. One thing that I mentioned that you end up running into a lot is tagging. And that's very cool within AWS. You can add tags to different resources, and then you can write different types of rules to be able to do different things based off of groups that are tagged with certain tags. That kind of makes management a little bit easier. Security and compliance. So IAM, multi-factor authentication, troubleshooting access, all sorts of different things. Understanding the limitations that you run into with multi-region stuff and how you can go about configuring different things. AWS organization, so bringing together multiple types of AWS accounts together. Key management is a huge one, whether or not you are using AWS keys or your own keys. AWS Secrets Manager, Parameter Store. These are all things that you probably will run into. Networking content delivery. This one's a big one. You really, really, really need to understand these things. So what a VPC is, route tables, subnets, security groups, NACLs, NAT gateway, internet gateway, differences between all of those, how you do routing, public versus private subnets, different types of protections that you use. So firewall using IDP, AWS web application firewall, and whether or not you use it as a standalone or you tie that in with an application load balancer, AWS Shield for denial of service attacks, DNS, differences between different types of zones and records, A records, quad A records, C names, alias records. Those are all things that you're going to want to be familiar with. How to troubleshoot, turning on VPC flow logs and sending those back to CloudWatch. And then cost and performance optimization. So something that I'll say right off the bat, I mean, since you're going to be doing a lot of labbing here, you want to make sure that you are keeping your costs down. And you go and get the free tier, you can do most of the labbing for free. But depending on what resources you're using, and if you keep them on and you don't turn them off when you're done doing your labs, you could get into some trouble. So setting up budgets or some type of CloudWatch alert to monitor all of the different resource spending that you're doing is super helpful. And I actually do that. I just have a CloudWatch alert for billing, keeps track. I have it set to make sure that I don't go over $10 a month. It will send me an email whenever I come within like 80% of that. And then I can go and be like, oh, yeah, I have all these extra Elastic IPs that I'm not actually having associated with anything. I should release those, let those go. Or I have all of this EBS storage that I'm not using. Let me get rid of that. So definitely helpful for you to see how that is. And then it will actually make sense when you're kind of translating that from a lab environment to an actual like organizational perspective. So cost optimization strategies, which type of EC2 instances are cheapest, but there's always a trade-off with that. Like spot instances are going to be the cheapest, but they aren't necessarily guaranteed. So if your workload is something that needs dedicated resources and it can't overcome data loss, then you might not want to do that, right? Reserved instances are going to be a little bit cheaper than on demand, but you need to actually have a contract for a longer period of time. So just kind of understanding the trade-offs between all of those. We talked about AWS budgets, billing alarms, usage patterns, performance metrics. I don't think there's anything really. Looking at RDS metrics, sure. So I'm going to kind of give a little bit more of a high level of different things that it covers, all the different features. I have a link for this in the video description, so you can really go and dig into this a lot. One thing that is really worth pointing out, though, is stuff that is out of scope. So if you don't want to get too worried about, the scope of what you're studying, these are things that they will not cover on the exam or should not cover on the exam. So, all right, let's hit up some of these questions here. I have the AWS practitioner, SSA developer, and security specialty. Yeah, so how is the security specialty? I might do that after the networking specialty. The networking specialty is really the one that I was most interested in, but I think that there's probably a lot of value in the security specialty. Have I tried a Cloud Guru training materials? I have not, but I've heard good things about that from reviews on Reddit. So I would definitely look into that as some potential for resources. How beneficial are these certs for a software engineer who wants a role as a sys engineer with specialized knowledge in AI, big data, and machine learning? Or what certs would you recommend for that? I mean, so I guess that depends on what tool sets the environment is going to be using. I mean, so I think that there actually is some AI or big data specialty that AWS has for that. I know that Azure has that as well. So I guess the question is, what you need to do as a stepping stone towards that advanced specialty. I don't think there's prerequisites, so you could go and maybe just do that specialty if you wanted to. But the question is, how comfortable do you need to be with the AWS environment before taking that? And so maybe the right answer for that is just the solutions architect. But I don't have a lot of experience with AI or machine learning, so I'm kind of riffing off the top of my head with that. I just know that I've seen those as specialties that AWS offers. Hey, Ed, appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for dropping in and checking out the stream. I'm not fully there. I'm not fully there yet, but working towards it. Really appreciate this one and congrats. Hey, thanks for checking out the stream. Thanks for dropping in. All right, let's see. So as far as the rest of the things in the exam that we can kind of cover real quick. So we looked at my score that barely made it, but hey, a pass is a pass. They also give you a breakdown of where you met competencies where you need improvement. What I'm not sure of is with the domain for the labs, if you sucked at a lab, if the areas that that lab is supposed to cover, then that ends up affecting this area up here. All I know for sure is that one lab, I totally got everything right. And then one lab, I couldn't quite figure something out. And I think I maybe only got 50% right on that one. And then the other lab, I ran into some issues and ended up, I think, getting it to work, but wasn't 100% sure if, even though I got it to work, it actually matched what they were specifically asking for. But as I said, a pass is a pass, so we'll take it. I'll ask you, now that you've had a few AWS certs, what's your opinion on AWS certs versus GCP certs versus Azure certs? That's a good question. So I haven't taken any Google certs, so I can't actually, I don't have an opinion on that. The Azure cert, I actually really enjoyed that particular exam. And the way that they did the grading on the fundamentals, I don't know if it's across the board in the rest of their certs, but you got partial credit if you answered a question with, like, if it was a multiple answer question and you got one of those right, you actually would get credit for that answer even if you got the other one wrong, which I actually think is a nice approach. I like that a little bit more than, you know, when they're pick 3 of whatever, and if you get 2 of the 3 correct, I don't know, I think you should get some partial credit for that. And they had a lot of like drag and drop and some other stuff, so I thought from an actual exam perspective, I thought it was engaging. I really like the fact that the SysOps admin has labs. I think labs are a great way to kind of gauge how someone does, except obviously in my case here where I did not do all that great on the labs, but it still made the exam, it made it more challenging, and I think that that's a good thing. Azure's always doing the free training and the free vouchers, which I think is a great thing. AWS, on the other hand, it's been a while since I've seen them do something like that. But one thing that they do, and let me see if I have it here. Yes. One thing that they do, which is helpful, is whenever you pass an AWS cert, you do get a 50% discount on your next exam. So I passed a CCP, and I got a 50% discount on my next exam, which I used on this one. So this one, it was $150. I got 50% off. Since I passed this one, then I got another 50% discount. So I think that's cool. I mean, that's helpful. I mean, the flip side of that is like the Azure ones, you could get it for free, but they only run that promotion, you know, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. And so if you're at a point where you're not within when they're doing that, then you're going to have to pay the full price. Also, maybe you don't want to go through the training that they require you to go through to get the voucher from Microsoft, because it normally is some type of learning program and answering questions and stuff like that. And maybe you've already prepared, maybe you're ready to take the exam, and you don't feel like wasting your time doing that. Let's see. They don't put exam scores on certs. Is that Microsoft, you mean? It's been a minute since I took that exam, so I don't quite remember. Let's see. Security was cool. Locking down service to private subnets, assuming rules for temporary credentials. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, a lot of, well, not a lot of that, but some of these things are actually things that was covered in the SysOps admin as well, as far as how to do some of those. So they probably took that and then like built on it with a little bit more advanced scenarios, I would assume. Okay, so I mentioned the 50% off discount here. Something else that they offer, which I thought was very cool and worth checking out, was when you sign up for this exam, they actually have a practice lab that you get access to. And it's the exact same environment that you'll be using on the exam. So this is a great opportunity to actually get in and see what it is that you'll be seeing in the lab environment on test day. So there will be no unknowns as far as what's available, what's not available, what does it look like. And so, it's free. It's in the email body once you actually register for the exam that gets sent back to you from Pearson Vue. I would definitely recommend taking advantage of that, just so you feel a little bit more comfortable. Okay, so we talked about the AWS discount, we talked about the free exam, we talked about the rest of the learning objectives. So let's talk about the materials that I use to study and pass the test. So the first thing I did was use ExamPro. I've had Andrew Brown on before. I like his stuff. I think he does a really good job with the way that he breaks stuff down, and most of his lectures end up having labs that or follow-alongs that you can do, and so I think that that's very, very, very beneficial. I like this. It was very good. I used this to pass the CCP. Use this to pass here. It's only $24. And actually, he has a multi-associate package, which actually you could buy that as well, and that will have his 3 training courses for all the associates. Let's see what that is, how much he's selling it. Only $48, so really, at that point, each of them is $16. That's pretty good. I will say I think that this needs to be updated a little bit. There was some stuff in here that is no longer on the exam. I think like the container stuff somewhere, like Elastic Container Service, I think is no longer on the exam. But overall, this was a great place to jump off. So I started doing this, and I started doing labs. And as I mentioned, a lot of going back and looking at the AWS documentation is very, very good, and normally will answer most of the questions, especially at this level for the type of stuff that we're doing at the associate level. All their documentation will pretty much cover, the different scenarios that you're coming up with as you're working through that. Another resource that I used was this AWS Networking Fundamentals. Do you need to get this book? No. Is this book super helpful as far as breaking down a little bit of CloudFormation and VPCs and networking and all that other type of good stuff? Yes. Is it worth $15? 100%. So I did this and started doing labs out of this. The second half of the book, I would say, starts to get into stuff that is more advanced and more towards the advanced networking specialty. So setting up transit gateways and setting up, multi VPC type of connections back to a data center and stuff like that, which you need to know is something that you can do. You need to understand about VPC peering. You need to understand about transit gateways, and customer gateways and virtual gateways and things like that. But you don't necessarily need to be able to go and configure transit gateways and virtual gateways. But again, this is a great book. Highly recommend that. And then at the end, I started using the tutorials Dojo practice exams. This was $15. These were great, mainly because most of the questions that are in here, especially when you're doing it in the review mode, for all the different answers, they give explanations of why all the answers are correct or incorrect. There's also sample lab scenarios here. So lab scenarios of creating an alarm using a metric filter, updating CloudFormation, creating a VPC, backup plan with AWS Backup, creating a load balancer with an auto-scaling group, all really good things, all pertinent things. And I think are related to what a lot of people, I won't say, these aren't exactly the labs that you're going to see on the exam, but the topics that they cover are aligned with similar topics that you'll end up seeing. And And I think there might be a few other labs that people have seen come up on the exam as well. If you go on Reddit, you can look that up and see what those learning objectives might actually be. So this was great, 15 bucks, 6 different tests. I found it to be super helpful, and this is pretty much what I was doing for like the last month of my studies, along with doing different types of labs. So with all of that said, once we go, I kind of threw this together to give you a little bit of an idea of how much everything cost. So AWS free tier, I was spending, $8 or so. We'll just say it's 10, because that's where I set my budget limit at. So 3 months at $10 a month. ExamPro was $24. Unless you go and you do that bundle for the associates, then it's really like $16 per course. Tutorial Dojo, $15. The book was $15. The exam, I showed you the 50% off coupon, so that was 75 bucks. So altogether, all my studying and taking the exam ran me almost 160 bucks, 159 bucks. So thought that was more than reasonable, especially for all of these different resources that I found to be pretty helpful. So let's move back over here, and we can go ahead and hit up, see if there's any other questions that came in. Let's see. I just completed all CompTIA certs, and I paid between $240 to $480. 75 to cert is great. Hey, so one thing to check out with the CompTIA ones, I mean, since you just got all of them, maybe this isn't a thing, but it's something you can pass on to other folks. Check it out when they have beta exams. So whenever they are making changes to their exams, they end up doing beta tests that they open up for people to go and take. I want to say that they only charge 50 bucks for that when you go and do that. I did that for their latest version of the Pentest Plus and passed that. So 50 bucks compared to however much, I don't know how much the Pentest Plus is. I think it's 350 or something like that. Pretty good way to get a cert and not have to put down that type of money. Let's see. You were correct. All the exams build on each other. Practical cert helped help the SSA, help developer, help security. Yep, makes sense. All right. Does anybody have any other questions or comments before we go ahead and wrap this up? As I mentioned, I'm starting to work on the AWS Advanced Networking specialty. That'll probably be the next exam that I really hit hard. Although, like I mentioned, since this SysOps admin stuff is still fresh in my head, I might actually just pop over and take the architecture exam here maybe in the next month or so. We'll see. I'm doing some of the Tutorial Dojo practice tests actually for that to kind of gauge to see if there's any gaps in my knowledge that would make me feel like I need to study a bit more before going and doing that. Let's see if there was anything else that I kind of wanted to hit on that. Oh, this month I am partnering with AWS, which is actually really cool. I think they saw kind of a bit of the content that I've been putting out lately. So if you go check out my Twitter page, especially my pinned tweet there, it's doing some stuff talking about the AWS well-architected framework tool. It's pretty awesome. A good way to kind of gauge your configurations environment against AWS best practices. Another cool thing with that tool is actually you can use it to measure your on-prem stuff as well. So it doesn't even need to be specifically AWS resources, although there is a lot of stuff that kind of ties back into that. So it does definitely align more with that. But yeah, if you go over to Twitter, you can check out my pinned tweet. Likes and retweets on that are appreciated. So let's see. We'll throw these up and then we'll get out of here. Thanks for this. Yeah, of course. Always appreciate you checking out the stream. Thank you, Lugger. Exactly. Pound the like button, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, your family, anybody who watches YouTube. I have some AWS certs for that. I never did any with a practical hands-on part of the test. Yeah, I think that the SysOps admin is the only one that has that for the associate level. I'm not sure about the professional level, but as far as the 3 associate levels, yeah, the SysOps is the only one that has it. How's the practical hands-on part of the test? I mean, it's in depth. They give you about seven or eight different objectives that you need to do. And you have a virtual environment. You're able to go through and use both the CLI and the web console or the management console to do what you need to do. And yeah, it accounts for 20% of the exam. It's manually graded, so you do get partial credit on some stuff. It also makes it that you don't get the exam score back right away. So I took my exam, finished it at like 6 p.m., and didn't get my score in the email saying that I passed until like 5 or 6 the next morning. So you don't get any instant gratification with it. And if the exam was rough for you, then you stay up all night stressing, especially when you think the exam is on one day and then find out it's a day earlier, like me. So cool. Well, I appreciate everybody dropping in. As Steven said, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, all that other stuff. Go get at it. Go have a great week. We'll chat soon. And let me know if there's any other AWS content you're interested in seeing. I'm probably going to keep making a bit more of that. We'll get back into some Try Hack Me stuff and some Cisco stuff here soon too. But yeah, all right. Chat with you later. Bye.